Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're live. NHPUK TV. John Lawrence can't make it tonight, so I've stepped in. John Lawrence is out knocking on doors, and he's doing what he should be doing and what a party should be doing. We need to speak to the public.
You've got moved, Pat. You've got moved. Pat, you've got moved. Hello?
Yeah. Yeah. You
I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Go on, are you ready? Just keep talking, Pat.
Yeah. And we're still getting an echo.
No, you're okay. I can't hear nothing. I'll go on mute for a bit and see what it's...
Right, can you hear me now? Oh, God, what have I done now? You're on mute. I think you've muted yourself, Paul.
Yeah, I muted myself, so there's no echo, but you're okay, Pat. Just carry on talking.
Yeah. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, John Lawrence in the chat. John couldn't make it tonight. He's outdoor knocking. Exactly what we should be doing as a party at every opportunity. Hello, Arlene. Hello, Martin in the chat, and Sensum. So, we're doing a live stream tonight. We're going to have a little look at finance and the banking system, taxation, etc. That'll be in about 10 minutes' time. Just waiting for some people to come on. Hello, Craig, in the chat. So, we had a successful officers meeting last night for the party. National Housing Party has a officers meeting once a month. And we had a little break because of the elections. We had a ferocious election campaign in 3 areas of the country. And we got some good results, and we had a 2-month break. So, we need people to join the party. Please come and join us. £12 unwaged, £22 waged. Our membership is growing. We also need help with leafleting, donations, articles for the website. So everything's going well, and this live stream's getting better and better every week. Every Tuesday, 7 p.m. John Lawrence, Paul Rimmer, and myself. That's going to be the upcoming live streams. And get us on Twitter. You can get Paul Rimmer on Twitter. You can get myself on Twitter. John Lawrence on Twitter. We've got a Scotland account. We've got a Northern Ireland account. We've got a Wales account. We are growing across the country, ladies and gentlemen. We've just applied to be registered in Northern Ireland because we are a United Kingdom party. We're passionate unionists. We're proud of our English heritage, Northern Irish heritage, Scottish heritage, Welsh heritage, British heritage. So it's all going well, and good to see everyone in the chat there. And we're going to start off talking a little bit about taxation, which is an interesting subject because, as we all know, we're being taxed to death, Paul.
Well, yeah, it sounds a bit dry talking about taxation and finance, but it's going to lead in to the big political issues because that's where they all come from. It was Bill Clinton who famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." The economy dictates and drives a lot of politics and a lot of the big decisions across the globe. Our economy is in dire condition. The economies of the West are in dire condition. The reason is we've been deindustrialized. And one of the main driving forces pushing companies out of the West and into mainly the Far East and South Asia is high taxation, high corporation tax. And you can see in Ireland, the Irish economy has been booming for decades because they've got the lowest corporation tax in the Western Hemisphere. So companies simply locate there and file their results there and pay their taxes there because they're paying far less. People don't want to pay tax. They don't trust the government. People know that the government wastes our money. It gives our money away, not only in foreign aid, but also it sucks in the third world immigrants and then puts them on the welfare state. We've got a huge welfare state in Britain, and we're talking about hundreds of billions every year. You know, we're talking really about £1 billion a day is going into welfare. That's 1,000 million pounds of our money every day is going into welfare. Wow. And then, of course, on top of that, you've got the cost of healthcare, which has skyrocketed, hundreds of billions a year, the cost of education. And of course, a lot of these immigrants that are coming in make no contribution. 80%, I saw a survey, 80% of all immigrants from the Islamic world stay on welfare for life. They never pay income tax, and yet they milk every system. Not only do they milk every system going, they have lawyers to represent them so they get the maximum out of the welfare state. I mean, we, the Brits, are sent to the back of the queue, except when it comes to paying taxes. Now, especially if you're a small businessman, even if you're a large businessman now, they put up the corporation tax to over 20%, 21% it is now, but they're hounding small businessmen for tax. They're maximizing the tax they can squeeze out of people. So basically, you're working for the state for a large portion of your working time. And what do you get in return for that? Very little for most people. If you look after yourself, I mean, I never go into hospital. If you educate yourself, I don't use educational institutions. If you finance your own life, which I do because I work, I don't get nothing from the state. I don't require nothing and I don't receive nothing, but still I have to pay taxation. This is because we've got this ballooning welfare state. It's out of control. And on top of that, and this is really important, we've got over 1.5 trillion. That's 1,500 million. This is a gigantic number. That's how big our national debt is. And because of inflation and rising interest rates, we're having to put more and more money into financing the national debt. The amount we're paying on every time the interest rate goes up by 0.25%, that's an extra £100 billion a year off the state through taxes just to finance the debt, not to pay off the debt, but just to finance the interest rates. So we're in a catastrophic decline economically, and that has huge political implications because it means going onwards, there's going to be less and less resources for welfare, more and more money demanded off the government just to finance debt. You'll get no return off your money. And yet the immigrants are still being brought in and are still expanding the welfare state. It's not sustainable. Not in the medium term. In the short term, it's pricey. In the medium term, it's going to hurt. In the long term, it's absolute disaster. We have to change track. Basically, we're a ship that's heading into the rocks. And it's not looking good, Pat. And this is the same in America. It's the same throughout the EU. It's one of the main reasons why we're going to war with Russia. Boris Johnson, Joe Biden said from the outset, the goal of this war, nothing to do with the Ukraine borders or Ukrainian sovereignty. It's about regime change in Moscow. They want Putin out. They want the Russian nationalists out. They want to take control of Russia. And they want to break Russia up, and then they want to farm its natural resources, steal them effectively. Because Russia sits on hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of natural resources, oil, precious metals, copper, iron, everything. Russia is a huge source of natural wealth. And the only way that America and the Western Europe can finance its debt without going bankrupt is to get their hands on that wealth. And fundamentally, as Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. Fundamentally, this is what the war on Russia is all about.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the welfare state, I am not in favour of the welfare state. I believe people should have to pay or do something to receive these benefits. And at the end of the day, the bankers love the welfare state. It's all linked. It's linked to the bankers. The bankers want our nations in debt to them. They got complete control over us. Like you say, we're getting in masses of debt, more and more and more, and we're sinking to the bottom. And like you say, that they're lashing out in desperation because Russia refused to cooperate with the globalism central banking racket, and they want to keep their country safe and secure. And this is the reason this conflict's happening on the Ukraine border. So the welfare state, for example, I don't think people should get unemployment benefit unless they go and do something. You must go and clean some graffiti off or something like that, or do something. Giving things away, that's socialism. Giving things away for no return, that is what socialism is, and I'm completely against that. I believe the NHS people should have to pay. It should be a pay-as-you-go service. So the more you need to use it, the more you got to pay. If you don't look after yourself, you're going to have to pay more medical bills. You know, only for things what are avoidable. Obviously, for serious illness, that's a serious unlucky illness is a different matter altogether. But yeah, I mean, taxation, like you said, that we're paying massive taxes for the benefit system. Like you said, the majority of people on these benefits are the inner city areas of our cities, which are now 37% white British. So the majority of them are probably from the Muslim community. They have many children, and we're paying the taxes for it, and it's an outrage. So, but what do you think is going to happen with Russia and their banking system, and will they survive? And our banking system is not going to survive. What do you think, Paul?
Well, we've developed this model in the West, what is called a social democratic model, really, just as you said, the socialist model. You take from those who make the effort to go out and graft, and you give to those who don't. That's essentially the way it works long term. And the Far East has developed a completely different model. The Far East has taken over China, Japan, Korea. It's taken over the world economy, manufacturing. But this model that they used was developed by a Scotsman, John James Cooperthwaite. He was a Scotsman from Edinburgh. He was educated at Edinburgh University and at Cambridge, at Christ College in Cambridge. He was a follower of Adam Smith, who believed that you should keep the government out of the economy, that you let the invisible hand regulate the economy. Capitalism, in a sense. What some people call economic libertarianism. Now, when he was governor of Hong Kong after the Second World War, when the Clement Attlee government took over in Britain and imposed a socialist model on Britain, which has brought us nothing but economic stagnation until Maggie overturned it, but partially. But in the Far East, he said, John James Cooperthwaite said, look, we're not going to have a welfare state in Hong Kong. We're going to have no taxes, no welfare. The safety net for society will be provided by the family, strong families, which in China was feasible, by charities. And this was what Britain was like before the Second World War. Charities ran most of the hospitals and schools, and also the churches. The church was very strong in Hong Kong, just as the church was strong in Victorian Britain. And the church took many of the social roles that were later adopted by the welfare state. The church provided charity, it provided education, it provided social services. but there was a moral element to it. Anybody who received services from the church was expected to become a believer and follow a moral lifestyle. Whereas, well, with the welfare state, it's money for nothing. The more idle you are, the more useless you are, the more of a rogue you are, the more money you get. It's crazy. It's an inversion of true morality. But anyway, it was a bit of an experiment by John James Cooperthwaite out there in the Far East. Would it work in Hong Kong? No regulation, no taxation, no welfare. And the businessmen started to come because people are entrepreneurial. People have got drive. He unleashed the drive within people and said, look, make your businesses, create your family businesses, get active. And people did. And you can keep your profits. Imagine that, Pat. You keep all your profits. That drives people to work harder and harder. And it created big networks of families, family businesses, and they exported, trade increased, and Hong Kong just went up like a rocket. Year after year, it soared its prosperity. It absorbed millions of immigrants from China and from Southeast Asia, but none of those immigrants received any welfare. They had to come to Hong Kong, work hard, and then you quickly integrate. If you have to work in a society and make personal relationships so you get jobs, he created the opportunities for people to integrate into Hong Kong. And Hong Kong became this beacon of light, which Singapore copied, and that it also worked extremely well there. But China, of course, had gone on the communist model, the exact opposite. The state control everything. The state provide all the services. The state claims the wealth. It didn't work. It was catastrophic. China didn't grow economically at all. It was poverty-stricken right for decades in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whereas Hong Kong did away with poverty. I mean, people say if you make these cuts in welfare, people will be driven into poverty and all that, but it's the exact opposite. Once you create opportunities for people to make money, everyone gets richer. And this is what happened in Hong Kong. And in 1976, when Mao Zedong died, Deng Xiaoping became the leader of China. And he said, we need a new model. I'm going to Hong Kong, I'm going to Singapore, let's see how they do it. And so what he did, he replicated their system in what were called special economic areas, Guangdong, which is called Canton, Fujian, along the coast, Waijiao. And he allowed these areas to operate with the same policies as Hong Kong: zero taxation, zero welfare services, zero regulation. And they just boomed because you release people's energy and people will get active. They'll form companies, they'll work hard because you can keep your profits. And of course, that works. That's really the model that works because it's people who generate wealth, not governments. Governments steal wealth. The bigger the government, the more problems you have. And this was realized in Britain in the late 70s. And of course, Margaret Thatcher tried to address the socialism. She privatized companies, she reduced taxation, she lowered regulation, and all the big wigs in this country, all the great and good said, this will lead to disaster. This will lead, I mean, I think it was 350 top academic economists said Britain's on its way to destruction under Thatcher. What actually happened was Maggie got 4% growth per annum, the highest growth in Europe. So it works. This economic strategy works. And the reason we enjoy the prosperity we do now, the reason we've had the property boom is because of what the changes Mrs. Thatcher made. But this sort of free market, free enterprise approach always works. Big state, big taxes always fails. Full stop.
Well, I think I'm a free market person, and but I do think there needs to be a balance where some things need to be nationalised, like the prison service. They have privatised that now, and it's a disaster. There's people escaping everywhere, and in America, they deliberately want to keep people in prison longer because it's a privatised industry. So I feel like you need a little balance with some things, but generally, I call myself a free market nationalist within our borders. I don't agree with unfair competition from other countries encroaching and giving us a bad deal at the expense of these globalist companies. But interesting about Hong Kong, it'd be interesting to know what the religious element to that that boom, during the boom when that happened, because obviously I think they might have been what's their religion in China? Buddhist.
Buddhist or Confucius.
Yeah.
Well,
So
actually, Pat, in Hong Kong, there is a very, very powerful Christian church.
right, well, that's what
There's
I was
over
going
a
to say.
million Christians in Hong Kong, and the churches there are very powerful. Born again believers, people use the church as the basis of their life, really, as a way to connect with each other, to network, to provide services. You see, you can't create these policies in a vacuum. You have to have an ideology, an overarching ideology for the whole of society. And of course, in the West, we were a Christian nation. So all the worst aspects of capitalism were mollified through that. We were taught to, live out the fruits of the spirit, to be kind, to be generous, to be considerate to others, to be charitable. Private charity was very important in the West. I mean, you can go into Liverpool Town Hall and there's busts there of entrepreneurs from the 19th century, but they were all philanthropists. They financed the schools for the blind. They financed hospitals for the poor. They financed poor schools. They provided wealth for the less well off in society, but it was private charity, and it was done without debt. The big three factors that made Hong Kong so successful was no debt, no taxes, and no subsidies. The government did not get involved in businesses, didn't try and subsidize them or protect them. It said, get on with it. Because the truth is, whenever the government gets involved, it becomes bureaucratic, and the bureaucrats look after themselves. The producers of the services, instead of doing a job on behalf of other people, they become selfish. This is what happens. Look at the rail drivers now in Britain, constantly striking, constantly disrupting our nation. And it's all self-seeking. They're not seeking to provide a better, more efficient rail service. It's just to put pressure on the company to do as they want. Now, if there's proper competition, it regulates itself. Even prisons. For example, if proper churches ran prisons, I imagine the prisons would be a lot better than they actually are, and would create reform characters, not just punish characters, but reform.
The trains, the national train thing is privatised, and they're striking. But going back to Hong Kong, the reason I said that about the religious element to it is because in the West, traditionally, before all this welfare state, it was a Christian society, and if people fell on hard times, the church would be the safety net. And I'll never forget a video I watched of what's his name, Stefan Molyneux, big YouTuber. He did a really good video on. He explained when Europe and America started going downhill, and it was basically in the 1920s. He basically said when women got the vote, and then when the women got the vote, then the welfare state creeped in, and then by 1950, Christianity was under attack, and the welfare state has basically replaced Christianity, and that's the main reason, in my opinion, we're in this mess.
Well, there's an ideology called socialism, Pat, which came in. You see, the thing is,
well, that's the welfare state, isn't it?
We've got enemies, right? Now, we've got this guy, George Soros, right? George Soros essentially is a libertarian. He believes in capitalism, and he's made a fortune out of it. But he believes in something else. He believes in the woke agenda. And what is the nature of his woke agenda? He wants control of society. He wants to create a society where there is no traditions, no prevailing religion, just isolated individuals who are beyond moral judgment, so they can, act in perverse ways. And he promotes these perversions. He wants people to be free of the law. He promotes crime. I mean, what he's doing in America. He's turning American cities into hellholes.
Yeah.
Crime is rampant. He's said defunding the police. What's this agenda that he's really pushing? It's about he wants control for his people. He wants to rule our societies by breaking us down into atomized individuals where we have no connection, no identity, no traditions, no nation. And this is how they poison the well, because you need to safeguard your nation. You need to be a nationalist. You need to safeguard your moral standards. You need to be a Christian. Christianity, the Ten Commandments are the basis of any society. If you take the Ten Commandments away, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, everything unwinds. Society goes down into the pan, you know. And that's what we've got now. So these people have come in, you see, they felt themselves separate from the social networks that controlled America and Europe. And they have sought to undermine the ruling ideologies, the networks that mesh our society together. And so once we become isolated individuals, they, with their money and their networks, dominate society. And this is what Suarez and his ilk are all about. And they think they have a right to rule us. Now they play this game of the green agenda, that somehow the planet's in danger. So they must rule us and they must tell us how to live and they must tell us not to drive petrol cars and so on. They become authoritarian anarchists in many ways. They want the power of the state, but they want to break all our traditions. And these people are very dangerous, Pat, very dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, there has not been any strong nationalist countries in the West who are willing to chuck these people out, refuse their brainwashing propaganda. They're pumping through the media. George, what's his name? George Soros. He's a no border internationalist, no borders fanatic, and apparently even in Israel they don't like him. The nationalist Israeli people. Because they do have different types of Israelis. But going back to the banking thing, you know, the West is propped up by NATO, who are the military arm of the Western Zionist empire, so to speak. And it wasn't a coincidence that Iraq, Libya, Syria, the real reason people say those countries were invaded is because they had much resources, like you said, Russia has, and that's why they're attacking Russia. But they had enough resources in Iraq, Libya, and they didn't succeed in Syria. But they also refused to cooperate with this. They wouldn't let the international Rothschild central bank into their countries because they could quite easily have continued on their own with their oil and their money. And the globalists wouldn't have it. Saddam Hussein wasn't going to be told what to do. Gaddafi wasn't going to be told what to do. Assad is not being told what to do. And Assad has come out on top because he got the help from the Russians. And now the Iranians are now in their camp. And now the Saudis are now in their camp. It's not looking too good for the West, is it, Paul?
Well, Pat, you've hit the nail on the head there. NATO. In the early 90s, Suarez was developing his worldview, and he said the organization which is going to replace the nation state and put his ideas into practice is the new NATO. Now, when he wrote that in the early 90s, just after the fall of the Soviet Union, I think there was 17 countries in NATO. There's now 30. He's expanded it eastwards. He's brought a lot of the ex-communist countries into the West, the likes of the Czech Republic, the likes of Poland. But Poland's problematic because Poland is a strong Catholic country which has resisted Suarez. Hungary has resisted Suarez and kicked out his institutions. But Croatia, he's moved in, he's moved east. And the reason is he wants NATO to push this idea of an open society, social liberalism, not economic liberalism, social liberalism, the breakdown of traditions. And of course, Russia saw this coming. They saw this creeping east of the Soros-based NATO, and they thought, we don't want this in Russia. Russia is a traditional society. It's held together by the Orthodox Church, especially in the post-communist era. And Putin, of course, is a great Russian patriot. And he said, you're not encroaching into Russia. Now, Ukraine is not a real country. The borders of the Ukraine were the internal borders within the Soviet Union. They mean very little. The
Part
east
of Poland,
Ukraine,
I think it was, part of Hungary as well.
well, the east of the Ukraine was Russian-speaking, Russian Orthodox Church. Crimea, the Donbass, Luhansk, got very strong historical links with Russia. They've never really been part of Ukraine. The west of Ukraine was part of Poland and Hungary. It wasn't even part of Russia, so it's very different, the west, what was called Galicia. And this is really, it's the people in the West who are driving this war. But the truth is, what they need is a new partition of the Ukraine. That's a practical answer to these problems. And they were going to achieve that. But the West has deliberately manufactured this war, just as it deliberately manufactured the Arab Spring, just as it deliberately manufactured the invasion of Iraq. And we don't know about 9/11, but I've got my suspicions that it was deliberately manufactured to create this so-called war on evil, which allowed the American military to go into these countries and reshape them.
Well, talking about strong Christian countries in Europe.
Just keep talking for a second. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, so Paul mentioned Poland and Hungary, who are probably the two strongest, Czech Republic as well. That's probably the three most strongest Christian countries left in Europe, and the other one being Russia. It's very interesting that Giorgia Meloni got elected in Italy, because Christianity is literally on its last legs in all of Western Europe. And I don't know if people have heard, any of the viewers have heard this, but Giorgia Meloni has announced that they're going to have a family pride month in Italy, which is great. I think it's great that she's doing that. I don't know if it's true. Have you heard about this, Paul? Giorgia Meloni announcing that they're going to have a family pride month in Italy. Because, you know, they have the other gay pride thing, and she feels like it's important to have a family pride month. And I think that's great news. And if she can get a revival going in Italy, that is just amazing news. I know she's disappointed a lot of people. A lot of people had higher hopes of what she was going to be like and things like that. But at the end of the day, she openly says abortion is wrong. Who would have thought we would get a Western European leader saying abortion is wrong, apart from Trump, obviously? Not sure what his 100% thoughts are on that subject, but I'm pretty sure he's not in favor of abortion. But what I'm trying to say is, if she can get that going, the family pride month, that would be great, Paul.
Well, the last week, Pat, you see, what we're really facing here is a battle between nationalism and globalism. How you run the economy is up to each nation. But in the last week, the globalists lost in Turkey. They backed Erdogan's opponent, and Erdogan won. Erdogan is a traditionalist. He is opposing the globalist, and he's linked up with Russia. Now, in Spain, they had local elections. The Vox party doubled their representation again. And they've forced the government, the Spanish government, to call a general election next month. The Vox party, yeah. The Vox party is a traditional Spanish party, and it stands against globalism. Meloni in Italy has played a blinder, Pat. She come in and they wanted to strangle her at birth, like they did with the Liz Truss when she became the Tory Prime Minister. Destroy her straight off and get rid of her. But she played cagey, and she's gradually taken over the Italian state and got herself in a very powerful situation. And last week, they had local elections in Italy, and the socialist strongholds in the likes of Tuscany were won by the far right, Pat. Italy is moving to the far right. And Meloni now is being more outspoken, and more assertive in fighting globalism. And biggest of all, because this is a real shock to the globalists, is what's happening in Germany. The alternative for Deutschland has gone up to 20% in the opinion polls. It's overtaken the Greens and the Social Democrats. And the whole Green agenda, which has been on the march over the last decade, is now being comprehensively rejected. And there's a huge anti-war movement in Germany, which is supporting the AfD.
Really?
Now, one of the reasons they've launched this Ukrainian attack against the Russian-held areas of Ukraine, yesterday it started in a so-called counteroffensive, is to try and overcome this. The fact that people don't want this war in Ukraine, don't want us attacking Russia. Effectively, Britain's at war with Russia. We're sending weapons, expertise, soldiers into the Ukraine. We're organising this counter-attack against Russia. We don't want it. It's no gain to us. They're just serving the globalist elite. They're serving the internationalists, you know, based in New York.
Just to let our viewers know that one of our policies is anti-globalist policy, leave NATO, leave the WEF, leave the WHO, leave the UN, leave the EU, and leave the IMF. So we want to have a Christian nationalist country to rebuild our country, which is basically nearly been destroyed by globalism and these cultural Marxists and central bankers they're just scavenging on the corpse at the moment. And we need to get into government eventually. We're a million miles away at the moment, but we're knocking on doors. We're talking to the public. Our leaders out in Oldham as we speak, knocking on doors. John stands in local elections. I stand in local elections. We had a good local election result in May. So please join us. It's £12 unwaged, £22 waged. Go to the website. You can join on the website with PayPal or credit card details. If you want to just come and help us leaflet, that'd be great. If you want to help us on social media, that'd be great. Let us know and get us in touch. We've got Jamie Lilly there in the back room. I'm going to let Jamie in to join the conversation. Hello, Jamie.
Good evening, everyone.
Before Jamie gets involved, I just want to respond to what you said, Pat. Those globalist institutions are malignant organizations. They're malevolent as well. They're very dangerous, and we need to leave them forthwith. Now, yesterday, Lavrov, who's the Russian Foreign Secretary, he made a crucial speech. He said that Russia will no longer obey the Washington-based world system of rules. Russia is now being turned by America into a rogue state. It's at war with the West. But Russia is not alone. China is right behind it. But China is cagey. We don't truly comprehend the nature of China, and we can't influence it. The Chinese are impenetrable. I mean, the Zionist influence, which has polluted the West, will not affect China because the Chinese are not open. They're not an open society. The Chinese look after their own interests, and they are now going head to head with the West. Their goal ultimately is to take over the whole world.
Paul, the most important thing in China is Christians are being persecuted badly, and there's a big Christian community in China, and they've got to hide their beliefs from the state.
What we need, right, is like the Orthodox Church is respected in China because it holds on to traditional morality. The Chinese now, they're utterly hostile to the woke agenda, which has polluted a lot of churches in the West, the mainstream
religion
churches.
Is illegal in China, Paul.
Yeah, but there are Orthodox. Yeah, that's true. Well, there's different degrees, but
illegal. It's completely illegal.
Yeah, we're not fighting. What I'm saying, Pat, is we're not fighting a Christian crusade against China. China has its own traditional ways.
No, but everyone's got to remember that they are persecuting Christians.
Yeah, but the Christian church has done a disservice to itself by embracing a lot of these woke agendas. The Christian church in the West should be up in arms about this Pride Month. Instead, a lot of them are going along with it, you know. But what I wanted to say was what Lavrov has said is now we're in a terminal battle now. There's no going back. It's globalism against nationalism. Now, we as a party are a small party which is starting to grow, but we're part of a nationalist wave. Before COVID, this nationalist wave was taking over the globe. But I believe that was one of the reasons why this came. You know, I can't mention it on YouTube, but the whole thing came about. Now, yeah, so the nationalism is resurgent and it's picking up again. The green agenda's gone into retreat. The nationalist parties are winning in Europe. Russia is taking the lead again, and they're not going to be defeated, Russia. They're going to win in Ukraine. They're going to humiliate Joe Biden. They're going to humiliate. I mean, the people who are running the American policy in the Ukraine, Tony Blinken, Tony Newland, these are Ukrainian Jews who have roots in Ukraine, and they see it almost as a reconquest of the Jewish Pale. And this is absurd, and it's not going to work. And the Russians will triumph, and the tide will turn, and we will be part of that new wave, nationalist wave. Each nationalist wave is getting higher and higher. Eventually, we'll get up the beach and we'll conquer. And of course, next year in America, there's a presidential election, and Trump is in pole position again. Everything is moving again in our direction because we're needed, because the people who've taken over the globe, the globalists, are not running it in the people's interest. They're causing chaos, and they've got to be stopped. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm behind you virtually all the way there, Paul, apart from Trump and his vaccine. But apart from that, everything you said I agree with. What I would say to you, Pat, is that part of the problem is that we've been interfering with other countries' policies. We can't go around telling the Chinese anymore, or any other country, we've got to respect human rights. I mean, this is what's got us in this problem in the first place. We're not here to worry about other people's policies. We worry about our own country. And this is the trouble. We know that China's been picking the bishops for the Roman Catholic Church in communist China, and the Pope's gone along with it. And that's it. If that's what the Pope wants to do is persecuted Roman Catholics in China, it's really got nothing to do with us. We can't go around forcing our colonial ways on other countries around the world anymore. This is my opinion. This is what the BRICS are doing. They're not getting involved in each other's human rights. They're working together as a common cause, but they sort of ignore each other's human rights.
I didn't mean that we should be telling them what to do. I'm just saying that we should remember that communism is anti-Christian and they execute Christians.
Yeah, but the thing is, Pat, we have to recognise this. And 1 second, Jamie. These countries like India and China are thousands of years old. They have their own traditions. So these countries are about order. They have their own way of keeping order. We've tried to impose on them this idea of democracy and freedom. But of course, it's all a bluff because we don't have democracy or freedom in the West. If we had democracy in the West, there wouldn't have been this ongoing mass uncontrolled immigration because nobody wanted it. This is all being imposed on us. The globalists have duped people into believing that they're fighting for democracy and freedom, but all they're fighting for is their agenda, and their agenda is destructive and it's oppressive.
I actually believe that the democracy that we believe is democracy is not the democracy which was originally democracy. It might sound a bit of a mouthful, but I believe that democracy
sounded like Kamala Harris there, Jamie.
I believe that democracy is represented through the jury system. And when you get bad laws, one jury member can throw them bad laws out the window, and they have to go back to this is how it was originally meant to be. If one jury member, if you bought if your government bought out a statute or an act or legislation, and it went in front of a jury, and one jury member threw that out, this is how real democracy works. It goes back to the government and it has to be trashed. It's been rejected by a random person in a jury, that's how democracy really works. It's how it was meant to work. They've changed the meaning of what democracy is. Democracy is...
Jamie, the problem is 2020, the election, it was stolen.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is a Manchurian candidate. He was imposed upon us. He wasn't elected. He's not up to the job. And suddenly, the whole illusion that they've created for a long time that we pick our leaders was destroyed. And we know that they imposed Joe Biden on America, and it's not working out. And all the checks and balances that were supposedly there in the American Constitution were not put into operation. So people have lost faith with the whole democratic process, and it's the lack of integrity. I mean, in Britain, it's the same. Nobody elected Sunak. In fact, he's just lost. He lost the election for the Tory leadership, but he's there now. Nobody.
I personally think that national democracy would have been okay like 60 years ago, but it's turned out to be international democracy. Like you said, that we're trying to impose our thing across the world, and we're forgetting about our own country.
Nationalists have known this for a long time, that we haven't had democracy. Nationalists have been experienced discrimination. You know, when we was in the BNP people, we knew we wasn't getting democracy. What's happening now? Everybody knows it now. Everybody's experiencing it. But we've known for a long time that we haven't been getting the democracy in the voting booths. We've been discriminated against. They only push through the mainstream media, the political parties they want in power, and they discriminate against the political parties that don't fit the narrative. But now, as Paul said, the great cheat happened when Joe Biden got in power, and YouTube went rogue. All the platforms went rogue. Twitter went rogue. Facebook went rogue on the alternative media, and that's when it really kicked in on 2020 in November after the election. That's when I mean, it was already happening before, but it went to a different level.
Twitter's going rogue again. Like I've heard today, someone got banned again on Twitter, and it's someone in the Bible study. You know, Sally. I won't say her last name, but Sally, who's come into the Bible study, she just got banned today. Jamie's been banned. Callum's been banned. I mean,
what did I get banned for? I don't even know what I got banned for, but I can guess what I got banned for. That's the thing. I can guess, but. There's no explanation.
He's handed the reins over to this lefty. She who is it, Paul? You mentioned it the other day.
She worked for the WEF.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, we've got to acknowledge that Twitter has given us a lot more latitude. I mean, I've been outspoken on it for months, and I've not been banned. You haven't been banned, Pat. Now, when they actually stole the election in 2020. There was what they call a horizontal integration of all these institutions, the media, the academic institutions, the big tech, corporations, both political parties, Republican and Democrat, they were in on the steal. And they were all given the same message and excluding the truth. You can say anything as long as you don't say the truth.
What happened straight after that? The coronavirus.
We can't mention that on YouTube, Jamie. I'm sorry about that.
What about Trump? Do you think he's going to get the nomination, and do you think it's going to descend into a civil war?
I believe that Garland and the New York tribe will do everything they can to stop Trump. They might even indict him and then charge him with a criminal offence and begin a trial, but they will fail.
Well, he's been charged already with that rape.
Yeah, but he's appealed to that, and that's going to be overturned.
And the Durham investigation is already rubbished it. How much can I talk about the Durham investigation with the Christopher Steele dossier that created the Durham investigation? The Durham investigation that came out a few days after he got convicted, they had to go on CNN. It was part of the narrative of convicted. Well, he wasn't even convicted properly, was he? Is that the Durham investigation proved it was all a lot of rubbish.
How far will they go to stop Trump?
Well, the globalists. You know the globalists are backing DeSantis now, don't you? The full force of Endelson, is it, from Israel, are putting the money into his campaign, and DeSantis was supposedly a decent chap until recently. He went to Israel to sign papers to make all these anti-free speech, anti-Semitism laws in Florida. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, but DeSantis It's now been exposed that he was in on the raid on the Mar-a-Lago, Trump's home in Florida.
Where did you hear that?
I heard it yesterday that Garland contacted him 3 hours before. He had a meal with Garland 3 weeks before, and just before the raid, Garland said,
Garland?
"We're going in."
Remind me who Garland is.
Garland is the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, appointed by Biden. He's the man. He's head of the Department of Justice, which is beginning all these cases against Trump. He is another member of the New York tribe who's seeking to destroy American patriotism.
I mean, I would want Trump to win this. Everybody wants him to win than anyone else. But the problem is it futile? He's going to have another, 5 years? And there's never going to be anyone anywhere near what Trump has ever been again in that.
No, Trump is the head of a movement, Pat. It's the Make America Great Again movement.
What's going to happen after the 5 years when he's got to go?
We'll get Jim Jordan to do it. Get Matt Gaetz. There's all sorts. That's a powerful movement, That's why they've sustained it through all its pressure.
I hope it is, but it's a difficult.
Oh yeah, it's not a one-man movement.
It's a popularist movement, and it's based on Christianity. It's based on Christianity. It's based on righteous beliefs, and then it's universal. That's why we have it in this country. And we've got to use the word "make Albion great again." I mean, it's universal.
Yeah, and of course in Europe as well. The nationalists are rising throughout Europe because it's the only answer to globalism. Globalism is not working. It's loaded us with debt. It's breaking down our societies. It's destroyed our borders. It's destroying our economy. It's destroying our morality. It's creating a crazy world, and we've got to push back against it.
It's an Orwellian world, and we was warned about it by George Orwell, and it didn't come in 1984, but it's here now. It's here now, and it's here with all its teeth baring at us, and there is no reality. It's clown world, no reality. It's illusions, and it's very, very evil. And it's destructive to national borders and individual countries, and it's destructive to humanity.
And it's costing us an arm and a leg through rising taxes and rising debt. So we need to reverse all this. We need to restore sanity in our country. And this is what the National Housing Party is all about, just bringing normality back. But this is happening right across Europe now. The people are rising.
And there's a message there from our leader, John Lawrence. We have cancelled tax rises across the UK. How do we get cancelled tax down?
Well, we have to stop dishing out money at the local level. I mean, these local councils, like the central government, just waste huge amounts of money, and they've got to be stopped.
Hello, Serena in the chat. Hello, Serena.
We need to have proper councillors who represent the ordinary people. And that's what the National Housing Party is about. The Labour Party and the Tory Party are two cheeks of the same backside. They're all about controlling us, dominating us, and using and abusing us. They'll take us to war if they get their way. We've got to rise up. We've got to assert ourselves and say, no, we don't want this way of life. We want true freedom. We want responsible government. We want lower taxes. And we want peace. We're not going to go to war for the globalists. That's what's causing the upsurge of the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany. We're not going to war for the globalists. We're not going to fight on their behalf. We've had two wars, the first Gulf War and then the second Gulf War. We've had the Arab Spring. We've had the deaths of millions of people in the Middle East. It's been overlooked. But this was all at the behest of the globalists. We were fighting on behalf of a foreign state.
Let me just remind the viewers and reiterate that the National Housing Party will probably never get into power. We know that. We're a pressure group. The whole thing about politics is you get your policies in place, you start getting people to like you, join you, vote for you, and then the parties above you get scared and they start adopting your policies. So we are a pressure group. we're on the third tier of politics, in my opinion. You've got the Lib Lad Con on the top. You got UKIP, Heritage, Reform, and Reclaim on the middle tier, and then we got us on the bottom tier. We're trying to force UKIP, Reform UK, Reclaim to adapt our policies, because their policies are not what we want, and it will be a trickle up process. So we're not sitting around moaning that it's all lost, we can't do nothing. We can do something. The BNP won 100 seats and they were responsible for the Brexit vote. I don't care what anyone says. The pressure they put on UKIP, on the establishment promoted UKIP to block the BNP, not thinking the British public would vote for Brexit. It backfired. The British public voted for Brexit, and that's what we've got. All from voting, all from local elections.
The truth is, Pat, the future is unwritten. Anything can happen. The impossible can happen. Small parties can grow rapidly. We can form alliances with other small parties. It will be a wave, a nationalist, patriotic wave, which will sweep this country. And it's sweeping Europe. We need to form alliances with other parties. We need like-minded people to come alongside us and to join us. And we will be a force for change, because what we are saying is the truth. You see, the globalists always operate under this slogan. It was the Chequers slogan: not a single word of truth. It's all about manipulation, lies, and distortion. We come with the truth, and the truth will set you free.
There are smaller parties that are reaching out, and the thing is, we don't tread on their toes, and they won't tread on our toes, and so we can get along without treading on each other's toes. There's plenty of room out there for people to vote for each individual party if you're not treading on each other's toes, and people will see who they will want to vote for. We have to be daring. We have to go out there with an opportunistic attitude, and we have to be daring, and we have to catch people's eyes. And yes, we can. I actually believe that a party like the National Housing Party, UK, can catch the imagination of the public. And never say never. We could actually catch the imagination of the public. And it's happened all over Europe. There's parties that have come from nowhere, and they're major parties now, like the Vox Party, like the Alternative for Deutsch Party. People, we got BBB in Holland. I'm not too sure about them, but the fact
that
of the
the
matter
Farmers
is,
Party, Jamie?
Yeah, well, the fact that they're called BBB makes me worried about them. Build Back Better, but nevertheless, they've come from nowhere. And Giorgia Meloni, I don't really like Giorgia Meloni. She's for the war out in the Ukraine, but nevertheless, her party's come from nowhere. It's showing you that throughout the Western world, people are looking for alternative to the uni parties. The uni parties are everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. They're all speaking, like Paul said. There's two cheeks of the same, and of the same arse, basically. People want something different. So if we went out there and we give a strong message to catch people, like lowering taxation, like getting rid of income tax. Income tax represents the slavery, the sweat of your eyebrow, which was brought into this country. The whole world has to know that in 1815, when Rothschild took over the Bank of England, income tax was introduced into this country. It's against the Constitution. The same thing happened in America when Rothschild created the Federal Reserve in 1913. Income tax was introduced into America. It has to be got rid of. And the central bank, everything central bank has to be got rid of. The Federal Reserve represents the Central Bank of America. The Bank of England represents the Central Bank of this country. And we saw what happened, how the Central Bank of the Bank of England created a financial crisis that I believe was artificial to get Sunak in. Just weeks, days really, after the membership voted trusts. This is unbelievable. Why were they so desperate to get Sunak in after the membership voted trust. It's because they want to push central bank digital currency where we never see cash again, and take us to another level of tyranny over the people, where they will control our money on a computer screen.
The truth is, we've been on a downward trajectory for a long time. We're sliding down into hell here, and we've got to reverse gear. We've got to start to ascend again, and we can only do that by the British people rediscovering their patriotism, the sense of belonging to this nation, fighting for their freedom, and escaping the tyranny of this globalist state, this globalist agenda. It's a war of liberation we're on here. It's a freedom campaign.
What did Thomas Jefferson say, Paul? He said, when the people fear the government, that is tyranny. And when the government fear the people, that is liberty. And that's what we need to go back to.
Yeah.
And the biggest missing link is the Lord Jesus Christ. We need Christianity brought back in society to direct the nation to a bright future.
Well, that's why I said the truth will set us free, because it was Christ who said that. We stand for truth, and we stand for what is right, what is just, and what is required. And it will lead to a better life for everybody. And that's what we need. We need a positive outlook as well. So onwards and upwards, guys. See you next week.
See you, Paul.
See you later. How long's this on for? How long have you been on? How long have you been on for?
I've been on for an hour. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the credit system? This credit, what's it called? The CCDC?
No, Central Bank Digital Currency.
Yes.
CBDC. Central Bank Digital Currency is interlinked with Chinese credit scores. Now, what China does in their country is their business. It's got none of our business. If that's how they want to run their country, and their people say, "Oh, well, what do we want free speech for? Does free speech put food on the table?" They're not interested in free speech to a certain extent. So let them get on with it if that's what the Chinese want. But what's happening is Klaus Schwab is obsessed with looking at how the Chinese run their country from the top down, using facial recognition cameras, and then to impose their laws on their people. And this is what, and our king is a member of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum, and he's a founding member, and he had a letter written to him to leave the WEF before he goes to Westminster Abbey to swear to protect our rights. Well, that's caused a conflict of interest, because he ignored that letter that was sent to the Duke of Norfolk. There was no reply that came back. And he's now caused a constitutional crisis. People are not aware of it because the media are not talking about it, but it's a constitutional crisis. You cannot be a member of a group, which is the WEF, that want to take our rights away, and then turn around and swear to protect our rights, because they're out to take our rights away, to get rid of cash, and then to impose a top-down.
How long's the WEF been in existence for?
Well, he was founded by Klaus Schwab. I don't know the exact date, but he was basically what was his name now? He's 100 years of age now. What's his name? The Kissinger. He's a Kissinger. He's a protege of Kissinger. So Kissinger chose Klaus Schwab, and it's all part of the globalist law, and it's bringing something that's even worse than communism. It is top-down control over everything's central controlled again, Pat. It's central controlled, coming from the top down, imposing themselves on the people. He's been about since the 70s, I think. I'm not sure, but he went to Harvard. He's a Kissinger protege, and Prince Charles at the time was part of it right at the beginning. And this just shows you where our king is. What on earth is our king getting involved with groups like this?
Mate. It's absolutely disgusting.
Is he controlled? Is he controlled? Is he being blackmailed? Because we know who he's been knocking about with over the years, and they're not very nice characters.
All right, listen, there's a question on the screen, Jamie. Will Rishi stop the boats?
No. Rishi's only here for one thing. and that's to crash the British
Do you
economy.
know the funniest thing I heard him say? He was doing his press conference, right? Now, let me just make it clear to the audience that we don't want any more refugees coming into this country, settling permanently and getting housing. We don't want any more people entering illegally. We don't want any more legal immigrants settling permanently, right? So when Rishi Sunak was doing his statement, he used the phrase illegal asylum seekers. This is how messed up they are, right? Because when Suella Braverman done her thing before, she's trying to protect the refugee convention. So she's saying that they're going to send them to Rwanda, but they're not going to charge them with a criminal offence of entering our country illegal. But she's calling them illegal all the time. They're just in a total mess with it. They're not going to stop it. And
no, they're not going to stop it. And you know, but the small print is on the Rwanda deal, don't you?
Oh, we get a disabled one for everyone we sent them.
We send someone with mental, psychological problems, and they really like that. Do you know why, Pat? Because they can make money out of them through the pharmaceutical industry, putting them on antidepressant tablets.
The benefit system as well.
Well, the benefit system, but the main thing is all the politicians have got shares invested in all these companies. Maybe it might be the fact that the pharmaceutical companies that are making these particular brands or whatever, they're all involved in it, or they're getting backhanders from them.
Yeah, I mean, what people got to realise is that the Lib Lab Con and UKIP and Reform UK and Reclaim Party and Heritage Party are never going to say we need to completely stop accepting refugees. And that is the root of the problem. It's our kindness, which as a country, which is being taken advantage of for the last 70 years, is the problem. And
they took advantage of our
those parties I just mentioned. They will never say, no, we can't take any more refugees. In all of their manifestos, UKIP, Reform UK, Reclaim and Heritage, they're saying that they can do a better job than the Conservatives, but they've got the same policies. They want points-based immigration still. They want to still accept refugees. It's only parties like our party and the British Democrats. We're the only two genuine parties who have not aligned ourselves with pro-immigration extremists who are the real deal and who are standing in local elections.
And immigration is just one weapon that's being used against peoples throughout the English-speaking world and in Western Europe. What are the other weapons that are being used against us? The WEF are using a financial crisis. That's the real reason why Rishi Sunak is here. He's to get rid of cash. That's his job. And I believe he's got to do that within the next 12 months.
Well, something has happened, Jamie. Something has happened in the last few weeks because we've got one of our members in Dover observing the whole thing, these dinghies coming over, and he has actually seen a massive drop in these dinghies coming up. I personally think they found another way into the country. They're coming in lorries, or they found another little technique to get in, because the flood's not going to stop. Because they know if they can get onto this land, they are going to get a UK passport eventually. They know that. So it's just getting here. That's all they got to do is get here. So we don't know how they're getting in there, but the numbers are going down from these dinghies, and we don't know what it is.
Well, there's other ways, isn't there? They just shows you how open our society is. They come in other ways. They can come in on the Euro train, and maybe people should be waiting at St Pancras Station, where the Euro train disembarks.
Yeah, because, well, also, I personally think they might be landing a bit further up the coast with bigger vessels or something.
Yeah, but this is just
obvious.
this is the talk that everyone's talking. There are other attacks on our country, Pat. It's the WHO that's going to come in by next May. They're going to have the right to call a pandemic in our country. And with that pandemic, they could open up the borders from sub-Saharan Africa, claiming, because all these different things that are happening, like climate change, could be part of a puzzle that links the WHO with climate change. And they can say, oh, we've got millions of people that are suffering in sub-Saharan Africa with this pandemic, this plandemic that they've created, and we're going to have to bring them over to Europe. And there will be nothing we can do about it because our politicians are going to sign sovereignty over to the WHO. So this is why we're seeing a scale of immigration that dwarfs even what we're seeing now, 600,000 a year. So what do? We have to, and Pat's rightly said that the WHO is one of the global institutions that the National Housing Party wants to leave. But at this particular moment in time, the WHO are being voted in by every political government in the Western world and throughout the English-speaking world. So this is where we have to sort of write to our MPs and make ourselves vociferous to our MPs, opposing the WHO taking over sovereignty. Look, we all voted in this country as well not to have any global institutions, to break away from it, to create our own laws, to control our own taxes.
Yeah.
And yet we're signing over to a branch of the United Nations, which is the WHO, and Ted Ross isn't even a doctor, and he is a communist.
Don't talk about the you-know-what, Sir Jamie, yeah? Listen, what's your Rumble channel, Jamie? We're going to have to end this stream now. So so this is Jamie
Patriotic
Lilly.
Twins UK.
Yeah, so this is Jamie Lilly, also known as Patriotic Twins UK. You can get him on Rumble, Patriotic Twins UK,
BitChute,
one word.
Rumble.
BitChute, and you can get
Rumble.
me on Rumble as well. National Housing Party UK. So it's National, capital N, Housing, capital H, Party, capital P, capital UK, one word. Rumble's where it's at. Nick Fuentes is getting like 1 million views on there now. So yeah, best to get over to Rumble, I think, because this
free speech channel. Rumble's a free speech channel.
Yeah. This platform is not a free speech platform. So listen, thanks for everyone who's watching, and thanks Craig in the chat, on the news. Ali.
How many people was on tonight, Pat?
We had 22 people, 23 people watching.
Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you have a good evening. Sorry I came on late. What time did you start?
That's all right. So message to I Like Volcanoes. You can either join with PayPal or you can join with credit card details as well on the website, or get in touch with John Lawrence, john.lawwrence at nationalhousingparty.uk. What's that, Jamie?
Yeah, what time did you actually come on? I thought you was coming on at 7:30.
No, 7 o'clock we was on.
And, 7.
But
okay.
That's all right. It's a good stream. Thanks for coming along, and thanks for everyone in the chat. Hello, Serena. Good to see you. See you, Craig, and see you next week. This stream is every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. National Housing Party UK. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.